This is Minseo. For 100 years, he was trapped in a world of monsters. He suffered all alone until he developed music. Infinite regeneration. One day, he made it back to the tutorial tower, but nobody remembered him because while he endured a music century of suffering, only 10 years had passed on Earth. In this world, powerful hunters are practically celebrities. He effortlessly wiped out the monsters in the tutorial music, shocking the entire world. Now, with a century of experience under his belt, he can steal the abilities of other players, proving that those 100 years in hell didn't break him. They only forged him into a god among men. An ancient voice echoes, speaking of a star that fell into the demon world 100 years ago. She warns the young man that he can no longer mess around with this world using his strange power. The dragon then asks the mortal for his wish, questioning what brought him to this place. Barely able to speak, the young man replies that he just wants to go home back to his own world. Music. The creature finds this a rather pathetic wish for someone who risked life and limb. It says that while the wish is trivial, the young man's journey has at least led him to the right place. The dragon then reveals a crucial detail. The crystal he needs to return home is lodged within its very heart. Our hero scoffs, saying the dragon has no idea what he went through just to find music it. He fought in that hellhole for an entire century. A century of pure agony. Hearing this, the dragon decides to grant him a small mercy. And that mercy is to end his pathetic life with a single clean strike. But the young man just smirks, agreeing it's about time this all came to an end. Suddenly, a blinding light erupts from his body and blasts toward the giant creature. The dragon takes the blast head-on, reeling from the sheer force of the impact. Startled, it wonders what kind of sinister and powerful light is engulfing it. The young man notices his wounds knitting themselves shut and wonders if he has healing powers. But the dragon corrects him, saying it's far beyond mere healing. It's full-blown regeneration. With his body good as new, he, music, dares the beast to rip out its own heart, or he'll do it for him. He gives it 3 seconds warning that he's not just some run-of-the-mill warrior. The creature, music, is stunned by his regenerative power, struggling to process what's happening. Then our hero mercilessly smashes the dragon's head with a single swift music, brutal blow. He counts down to 1, declaring he can't wait any longer to finish this fight. And with a heavy thud, the dragon's colossal body finally crashes to the ground, defeated. We then learn his name is Sumin, a hunter, from the healer class. He holds the crystal and complains, grumbling that it's a pretty lame reward for 100 years of fighting. A voice tells him to shut it, calling the item priceless as he casually tosses it into the air. Without a second thought, the guy just swallows the dimensional crystal whole. Immediately, a magic circle, music, materializes beneath his feet, pulsating with potent energy. He grins, completely satisfied, thinking that finally, after all this time, he's heading back to Earth. Our hero can't wait to see his disciples again, and more importantly, his brother. Music. And with one final thought, he focuses on at last returning to his beloved home, Earth. In a flash of light, his body slams onto the grass in the middle of an unfamiliar forest. He starts to mumble, slowly waking up, still a little dizzy from the trip. Then the guy jolts awake, shouting in alarm as he finds himself in this strange place. It's music. A mysterious voice calls him a freeloader, asking if he's finally touched down. The same voice grumbles about being treated like food and tells him to get a move on before it vomits all over his insides. Our hero chalks it up to portal sickness, hoping the disgusting parasite gets digested soon. Already annoyed, he tells the creature to shut its trap or he's going to puke right there on the spot. The parasite asks if they're actually on Earth, and the young man confirms it, but admits he doesn't recognize the area. He notices music, a strange mana flow one that feels a lot like being inside a gate. Suddenly his mana starts draining away, and the parasite snidely asks if his power was all for show. Our hero panics, shouting, music, that he can't believe this is happening again. He explains it's a side effect of dimensional travel. His power has dropped to about 20% of its full strength. The parasite, music, gets ticked off by this, but the young man replies that it's not that simple. He recalls that last time it took him decades to recover, which sends the music parasite into a rage. The young man tries to reassure it that he still has a few tricks up his sleeve, but a sudden scream cuts him off. We see a girl running for her life, panicked that she got separated from her party. Right on her heels is a giant orc brandishing an axe, leaving the poor girl utterly terrified. She ends up tripping over her own feet, while screaming for help, falling flat on the ground with no way to escape. Despair clouds her face as she begins to accept that this is the end. But just in the nick of time, our hero appears and stops the monster in its tracks, asking if he could have a word with the girl. He flashes a huge grin and excitedly asks if this place is in fact planet Earth. Totally bewildered by the question, the young woman stammers out a yes, clearly still terrified. He then asks for the current year, and she answers 2037, still in shock that he took down the beast in a single hit. Xiumin does the math and realizes that 10 years have passed on Earth while he lived for 100 years in the other world. He follows up with a crucial question: who's the current president of Korea? When he hears the name, our hero completely loses it, yelling that he can't believe that guy actually became president. He's absolutely furious, thinking to himself that the bastard really managed to climb that high. The young hunter wonders if Korea has run out of heroes, or if this guy is just putting on an act. Our hero senses some strange mana and asks her about it, and she explains that they're currently inside the tutorial tower. She tells him the tower is used to awaken new hunters, which is news to him since it wasn't like that back in his day. She explains that only the first generation was exempt, and he asks how long it takes to get out. The young woman replies that the current record is 3 weeks. This leaves our hero deep in thought. Just then, a strange noise from some nearby bushes snaps them both to attention. Suddenly, a massive tiger leaps out from the foliage, its sudden appearance making the girl jump out of her skin. She lets out a scream of despair, recognizing the creature as a Trolliger, an extremely dangerous monster. The young hunter yells for them to run, but Xiumin thinks 3 weeks is way too long. She desperately insists they escape, but he feels his body is still weak from his long journey. As the beast lets out a deafening roar, he decides he'll have to take it easy with this one, which sends his new companion into a full-blown panic. He then shoves her out of harm's way and unleashes a devastating blow right to the beast's face with everything he's got. The girl is left completely stunned as he declares it will only take him 5 days to finish everything. Xiumin confidently states that this amount of time is more than enough for him. The scene then cuts to an office where a man is being briefed about a group that has just returned from the tower. He asks if it's the team that went in 8 weeks ago, remarking that their clear time is pretty reasonable. However, his subordinate reveals that one of the members who emerged wasn't on the original roster of beginners. And to make matters worse, another employee chimes in, reporting that this person isn't even in their system. The employee adds that this mysterious newcomer is causing quite a stir. As the chief takes the report, his eyes widen in genuine disbelief. He looks at the young man's photo and stammers his name, wondering aloud if it could really be his brother. The scene cuts back to the tower, where Xiumin jokingly asks the young woman if she plans on following him around forever. The huntress is still in disbelief, wondering if this is all just a dream. She can't wrap her head around how someone cleared the tower in just 5 days, while he's just happy to feel his strength returning. Right on cue, a system voice announces the end of the tutorials and begins to calculate his attributes and skills. The system, however, simply can't compute his data, which earns a small smirk from our hero. After an intense flash of light, the exit gate finally materializes right in front of them. Our protagonist starts walking toward the light, leaving the girl behind for a moment. She calls for him to wait as he thinks to himself that he's finally made it back to Seoul. Meanwhile, out in the lobby, a crowd watches as the portal opens, revealing the two of them inside. One of the guards comes over to ask what all the commotion is about, and a staff member tells him the gate just opened. A nearby employee recognizes the girl from the entry list, but not our hero. As a guard approaches them, the young man greets him, saying they're the leaders of Team 2. The employee explains to the guard that the problem is the guy's name wasn't on the original entry list. Scoffing at the idea that this scrawny guy could have cleared the tower, the guard glares at him with contempt. With a cocky smirk, he pushes the employee aside, saying he'll handle this himself. He gets in Xiumin's face and demands to know why his name isn't on the register, to which Xiumin replies he didn't enter that way. The guard barks that he's lying, since everyone has to enter through the gate, but our hero simply denies it. The guard gets even more irritated by the vague answer, and the parasite dryly comments that this guy seems to enjoy looking for trouble. The brute shoves his face right up to the rookies, ready to teach him a lesson. He pressures the young man to spit out the truth, or things are going to get very ugly right here and now. Finally losing his patience, the guard screams for him to start talking, or he's going to get the beating of a lifetime. But our protagonist just responds with a mocking smirk. He calmly tells the guard to shut up because his breath stinks. This leaves the man completely dumbfounded. Xiumin casually cracks his neck and asks if he's really that eager to get beaten up. He then challenges the guard to a fight, but not before telling him to please close his mouth because it smells absolutely awful. The brute's face turns beet red with rage. He lunges forward with a punch, cursing the hero's name, but the young man catches the fist, effortlessly saying he warned him to shut his mouth. And to top it all off, he calls him a mouth breather, a simple but brutal insult. The other employees standing nearby are left completely speechless, their jaws practically on the floor. The scene cuts to show all the guards lying on the ground, completely taken out, as a pair of officials wonder what in the world just happened here. An employee reports that some guy picked a fight with security and the boss immediately wants to know where he is. The guild leader, Si-Jun-min, cuts right to the chase and asks if they caught anything on the security cameras. They confirm they did, pulling up the recording of the incident, showing our hero facing down the guards. In the footage, the security guards are tossed aside like rag dolls completely effortlessly. One of the men reports that 5 hunters were defeated, speculating that the intruder must have used an invisibility skill. But his colleague corrects him, explaining it wasn't an ability, the guy was just moving incredibly fast. Meanwhile, Si-Jun-min glances at the report on his tablet and his brother's name, Sue, catches his eye. He sees the photo and confirms it's really him, looking exactly the same as he did 10 years ago. Without a moment's hesitation, he gives his subordinates a clear and direct order. He tells them to put a bounty on his brother's head and mobilizes all guild members for the search. Alone, he wonders where his brother could have been. All this time, was he kidnapped, or did he just run away? His mind races as he tries to guess his long-lost brother's next move. The scene shifts, and we see Si-Jun-min talking with the huntress who escaped the tower with our hero. He asks if she cleared the tower, and she confirms, admitting she basically just piggybacked on the other guy's success. He figures she must have gotten a good skill, and she reveals she obtained an A1 rank skill. Seeing her potential, Si-Jun-min decides it's worth recruiting her and offers her a coveted spot in the Imperium Guild. The huntress is absolutely ecstatic, barely able to believe the famous Imperium Guild wants her on their team. She accepts on the spot, but a mysterious voice chimes in that Imperium seems more like a bunch of street thugs. Annoyed, Si-Jun turns and tells the guy to watch his mouth, which startles the young woman. Just then, a white-haired hunter arrives, offering a very sarcastic apology. He introduces himself as Juan Ryu, master of the Gungang Guild, and nonchalantly calls Si-Jun sensitive. Another guildmaster, Seong-il Choi, chimes in, reminding them that they were all summoned by the Hunters Association. They all glance over at the unconscious guards on the floor, wondering if this was the work of the mysterious new awakened. Juan crouches down, remarking that this person certainly made quite an entrance, and a messy one at that. Seong-il agrees, saying they need to find this guy, as he must be incredibly valuable. He admits he wants to recruit him, which makes Juan laugh, and propose a race to see who gets to him first. He suggests a finders keepers rule, hinting that things might get a little rough during their competition. All the while, Si-Jun watches the exchange in silence with a very unfriendly expression on his face. Seong-il suggests they split up, and Juan hands his business card to the surprised huntress. He says goodbye with a wave, mentioning he'll be in touch with all of them soon. Si-Jun-min scoffs with contempt, clearly doubting Juan will actually do anything. Outside, a young man with blue hair waits for his master, Juan, who approaches a moment later. The young man asks if the talk went well, and Juan tells him to gather their hunters to find someone. When asked who exactly they need to find, his master just gives him a mysterious smile. With a dark look in his eyes, he reveals that the true target of their search is Si-Jun-min's family. The scene then cuts back to our hero Sue walking alone through the bustling city streets. The parasite starts complaining that after 100 years, the very first thing he does is eat fried chicken. But Sue just eats happily, telling it to be quiet so he can recharge his humanity. Out on the street, the parasite asks where they're heading next. Sue answers seriously, saying the answer to that question should be pretty obvious. With a distant look, our hero says there's only one place to go, his home. He stops in front of a rundown old house, confirming this was where he used to live. With some hesitation, he pushes open the wooden gate, which creaks loudly as it moves. A voice from the past echoes in his mind, welcoming him back. In a flashback, he remembers his parents greeting him at home after a long day. He also remembers his younger brother running excitedly when their mother called for him. It's a happy memory of a family dinner with everyone gathered and joyful, but the reality waiting for him is starkly different. The house is completely ransacked and abandoned. Empty bottles and thick spiderwebs are everywhere, showing the place's depressing state. He remains silent, just observing the mess with a sad, lost look. Lying on the porch, he sighs, lamenting that he can't even clearly remember their faces anymore. He thinks about how they say the ability to forget is a blessing, but for him it's a curse. For 100 years he fought nonstop. His body stopped aging, but his senses began to fade. Terrified of having his identity erased, he desperately clung to his memories of his brother and all of his precious disciples. Instead of being fond memories of the past, they twisted into targets of obsession and regret. But he endured it because those were the very memories that kept him sane for an entire century. The parasite breaks the somber mood, complaining that the place is cold, but Sue cheekily reminds it that there's no fried chicken in the demon world either. He then announces they won't be staying here for long and that it's time for them to get going. The young man decides his next move is to check on his disciples and see what they've been up to for the last 10 years. He's also hoping his brother Sejun is doing okay, but his thoughts are interrupted when someone shouts that they found him. A group of hunters shows up, and our hero coolly remarks that it's about time. Their leader steps forward, introduces himself, and asks if he's the guy who caused a scene at the tower's exit. Another hunter strolls up with a smirk, sarcastically asking if he wants a medal for it. Getting annoyed, they announce they're from the Gung Guild, but our hero just says he couldn't care less. The hunter tries to intimidate him, but he just fires back that the guy should be walking on all fours instead of crawling. He keeps the taunts coming, adding that since the dude looks like a gorilla, he might as well move like one. The hunter finally snaps, yelling that he's had enough and is about to teach him a lesson. Glowing with green energy, he lunges forward with a powerful strike aimed right at our hero's face, but the punch just smashes into the wall behind him. Having dodged with unbelievable speed, the protagonist watches as the aggressor whirls around and screams, "Who the hell are you calling a gorilla?" His buddies start laughing, pointing out that the guy got taken out while our hero's hands were still casually tucked in his pockets. We learn that his skill, Mercury, doubles the user's speed. The parasite chimes in asking if he wants to absorb the skill, and our hero agrees, saying it's the first one he's come across. Hearing this, the protagonist suddenly leaps into the air, leaving the red-haired hunter completely baffled. In the blink of an eye, he reappears right behind the guy who lets out a scream, totally confused about what just happened. Then with one precise strike, he slams the hunter with his full force, sending him crashing violently to the ground. The man spits out a mouthful of dirt from the impact, leaving his friends absolutely terrified. Our hero then stands over the fallen hunter, preparing for his next move. He holds out his hand and commands his predator skill to consume the prey right in front of him. Suddenly, a dark magic circle materializes, trapping all the hunters where they stand. The predator skill activates, and he manages to extract the speed skill from the hunter. He's thrilled that it works on Earth, but the parasite complains about the taste, saying it's got nothing on fried chicken. Meanwhile, one of the downed hunters is writhing in pain, a testament to the skill's power. One of the remaining hunters yells for the group to attack, so our hero decides it's the perfect time to test out his new skill. He agrees with the parasite's suggestion, getting ready to try out his newly acquired power. Using the Mercury skill, he moves like a blur, taking down several hunters in a single fluid motion. An angry hunter charges at him with a knife using a dash skill, but our hero stops him with a single blow, knocking the guy out cold with a perfect uppercut to the chin. He casually complains about the guy's dull blade before extracting his weak point strike skill. Another hunter tries to take advantage of the distraction to attack from behind, but our hero just smirks, saying he'll be taking that skill too. Suddenly, a desperate voice screams his name, causing him to freeze mid-attack. The scene pans out to show our hero holding one guy hostage while the rest of the squad is knocked out on the ground. He glares at his enemy with a serious expression, the knife held threateningly close to the man's neck. Just then, his brother Sejun arrives on the scene, panting for breath as a memory from their past flashes through his mind. He breaks into a relieved smile upon seeing his brother, who just stares back in shock and confusion. The protagonist recognizes him immediately and asks what Sejun, his own brother, is doing in a place like this. A flashback begins, taking us back 20 years to when the first gate appeared on Earth. Monsters poured out from it, spreading chaos and destruction all across the planet. But the gate also awakened supernatural powers and people, creating the first generation of hunters. With their parents gone, Seo became a hunter to provide for his little brother. A young Sejun then asks his older brother why he isn't going to school today. Seo replies with a kind smile, telling him that from now on he'll be working instead. The little boy looks sad and asks if it's his fault, but his brother quickly reassures him, saying he just decided on his career path a little earlier than most people. Sejun then asks if he'll be home late. Our hero says goodbye, promising he'll be back as soon as he can and telling him not to worry. The scene shifts back to the present, where the protagonist is complimenting his brother's incredibly fancy new house. He's completely blown away by the place, and Sejun explains that he just followed the teachings his brother left him with. In his thoughts, Sejun reveals he bought this very house for the day his brother finally came home. Seo gets excited about finally having his own room, and his brother thinks about how tough things must have been for him. Sejun gets emotional, saying that from the way he talks, he knows it's really the brother he once knew. Sejun moves closer and asks where his brother has been all this time, wanting to know why he's only returning now. With a smile, Seo invites him to sit down, telling him he has 100 years worth of stories to share. Now, sitting comfortably in the living room, the older brother begins to give him the short version of his very long journey. He explains that he was transported to another world where he found a parasite that can extract skills. With its help, he defeated the world's final boss, a dragon, and used its crystal to finally come home. He finishes his story while munching on some food, adding that this predator now lives inside his body. Sejun freaks out, asking if he's been possessed, but his brother just brushes it off, saying it's only a parasite. He tries to reassure his younger brother, admitting it sounds nuts, but insists he's totally sane. Hearing this, Kun says he trusts him and is just glad to have him back for now, but then his expression turns serious as he asks how that scumbag Disao Choi ended up as president. His brother explains that the guy swiped all the credit for himself and used it to climb the ranks. Su grinds his teeth in fury, while Shun can't help but wonder what their rival's next move will be. He then asks if the thugs who jumped him were working for that one-eyed rat. But his brother says no, explaining they were from a different guild and that there are 7 major guilds in total. It turns out their own guild Imperium is also one of these elite groups. Kun mentions that Guanggang is another one, and our hero notices just how annoyed his brother seems. Seizing the moment, he decides to ask how his old disciples are doing. His brother tells him they all went their separate ways, and that he hasn't been in touch with them for a long time. He explains that one of them returned home while the other ended up siding with that jerk Dao. The protagonist then presses on about the last one, asking what happened to Minjun. With a grim expression, Shun breaks the tragic news his disciple was murdered. Su is stunned by the revelation and demands to know who was responsible. His brother explains that they never caught the killer because their friend's body just vanished into thin air. He suspects another hunter was behind it and says that even a special agency looked into it, but came up with nothing. Our hero is puzzled by the agency's acronym, wondering what it stands for. Sejun explains that it's an international organization dedicated to investigating crimes that involve hunters. He continues, adding that the agents there are always on the front lines of the action. Basically, the agency is like a police force specifically for hunters and the awakened. With a glint in his eye, Seo asks if his brother happens to have any contacts on the inside. Sejun says he does, and offers to help, urging his brother not to risk going on a mission by himself. The protagonist thanks him, but clarifies that he needs more than just information. Kun insists that hunters are fighters, not investigators, and tells his brother he should just get some rest. But Seo cuts him off, reminding him that he just spent the last 100 years fighting just to survive. With an intense look, he assures him there's nothing he can't or won't do to get the job done. His brother gulps, suddenly remembering what people used to call him. Seeing that fierce determination, Shun finally gives in and agrees to contact an administrator at the agency. He thinks to himself that his brother's aura feels different now, just as Seo recognizes a familiar face on the screen. Shun identifies the man, but our hero reveals that the guy's real name is actually something else. The scene then jumps ahead 2 days, where we see a man storming into a room absolutely furious with the rookies. He's complaining that the higher-ups sent over a new recruit without even running an evaluation on him first. The guy starts grumbling about how back in his day life as a hunter was a whole lot tougher. One of the rookies has heard this story about 700 times already, but the boss insists on telling it again. He brags about how his team was completely devastated just at the thought of losing their ace. But right at that moment, a healer with unbelievable power showed up and saved the day. He's lost in the memory of how the guy healed him, but gets snapped out of it when someone calls his name. Our hero walks up and asks why the man changed his name, leaving the guy completely baffled. With a smirk, he asks if the man remembers him, his savior. The team leader stammers out the name Sumin before shouting his old nickname, Mad Dog, in total disbelief. A flashback shows us just how overwhelmingly powerful he was with his healing magic back then. The team leader clears his throat and nervously introduces Seo Min to the team as their newest talent. Awkward and sweating bullets, he tells them to give the rookie any information he asks for. 2 of the team members think the boss's behavior is weird, and one points out that this new recruit is clearly no ordinary guy. Just then, the boss snaps at one of the women on the team and orders everyone to head to the conference room. Now, as they're walking, the others start to wonder if the new guy might be an S-rank hunter. The entire team is falling over themselves to please him, offering coffee and even a uniform, but all he asks for is a coffee. The data administrator asks the boss what kind of information she should provide to the rookie. The protagonist then tells her to compile and hand over all the data she has on hunters who have died. The woman is taken aback by the request, but the leader tells her to just do as she's told without asking questions. He assures her that she can handle it, making her wonder to herself who this man is and what he did with her real boss. She then clarifies if he only wants data related to hunter-on-hunter homicide cases. He confirms, adding that he also wants a list of all the killer hunters who are still at large. He reflects on the fact that only a high-level awakened could have possibly killed his disciple. The top priority now is finding that killer. The girl then asks where she should send all the data. Our hero tells her to just send it all to his phone, and right at that moment there's a knock on the conference room door. An agent bursts in announcing the police need backup for a gang war. The leader dismisses them as a bunch of nobodies, but the agent clarifies that one of the gangs is Cerberus. With a weary sigh, the leader already looks fed up. Our hero has no idea who Cerberus is, so a female colleague explains they're a notorious gang, even involved in hunter trafficking. Hearing this, our protagonist asks the leader to take him along on the mission to investigate. The boss instantly agrees and rushes out, with the hero practically dragging him along and confirming he's on board. Putting on his jacket, he quips that as a recruit, he needs to keep a close eye on his superior. The scene then cuts to a wrecked bar where a man is bragging about his easy victory. This is gang host Cerberus' second-in-command, who proudly calls himself the gang's invincible shield. Kadzani and Imigo. Just then, another member named Jin, the third-in-command, chimes in wanting some credit for himself. Gang-ho tells him he'll have to beat him to earn that recognition, a challenge Jin eagerly accepts. After more bragging, a subordinate asks if they can start marking their new territory. Their leader roars that from this day forward, this place is the new territory of Cerberus. But their celebration is cut short by a massive explosion that blasts one of the members. A shocked Jin scrambles up, demanding to know who's there, thinking they'd already taken everyone out. Meanwhile, our hero struggles to remember his agency's acronym until his parasite corrects him. It's HMCS. He introduces himself as Hunter Police and orders everyone to surrender immediately. Jin starts to panic, wondering how the authorities got there so quickly without being detected. The gang leader sneers, calling the agent a filthy pig. Then, with a cry to die, he mercilessly crushes the skull of one of his own henchmen. Jin is horrified by this stammering and asking his boss what he just did to their own man. He screams that if the agent dies, things will get complicated, but his boss couldn't care less. Just then, our protagonist appears, casually cracking his neck, which startles the gang leader. With a sinister grin and glowing eyes, he challenges the leader to show him what he's really got. The gang members mutter that they've never seen this guy before, and Jin can't help but notice the strange look in his eyes. The boss is baffled as to how he survived the initial attack, but resolves to finish him off for good this time. With a furious roar, he activates an armor skill, vowing to kill him for real. The entire gang then charges at our hero, ready to end it. Suddenly, the gang leader finds himself in a strange, dark place. He sees an old man across a river and calls out, but the figure just gives a strange wave, causing him to scream in despair. It turns out the fallen gang leader is hallucinating about his grandfather. As our hero finishes him off, he unceremoniously grabs him by the hair, telling him to get up, with everyone else knocked out on the ground. He informs the last man standing that he's the only one left at the party. His parasite chimes in that the guy's skill looks tasty and urges our hero to consume it. The terrified gang member yells that they're just low-level grunts and demands to know why the hero is doing this. But our protagonist just scoffs, saying he already knows that they look like a bunch of incompetents. Still confused, the man asks for the reason behind the attack. The hero coolly explains he just wanted to test some criminals and pull some weeds from the city. Right on cue, the team leader rushes in, frantically asking if our hero is okay. He completely panics at the sight of the carnage, to which our hero casually complains that they took their sweet time getting here. He explains that he left one conscious for questioning, but sent the rest to the afterlife. The boss is utterly terrified, wondering how he can be so nonchalant about it all. Then it hits him, he forgot to turn on his body cam and he's still on probation. He casually asks his boss to clean up the mess, and the terrified man quickly agrees. When the hero points out the blood on his clothes, the boss, practically hiding, agrees to handle that too. Someone reports over the phone that Cerberus has been completely wiped out and that a man named Jakin also died in the incident. On the other end of the line, a hunter from Hong Kong asks for clarification on who exactly died. Meanwhile, at the international airport, Hunter GE from Hong Kong arrives with his team and they head to a pre-arranged location. An agent from the Korean Hunter Association offers his condolences, but GE cuts right to the chase asking where his brother is. The agent explains that the forensics team is currently processing the remains of Jakin, who was a suspect in an ongoing case. G cracks a mocking smile, amused that they called his brother a suspect. He asks directly if an HMCS agent was responsible for his brother's death, but the agent refuses to comment. Getting irritated, G asks if he's at least free to leave his accommodations whenever he pleases. But the agent denies the request, warning him that doing so would violate the law, potentially leading to a fine and immediate deportation. G gets the message loud and clear. They just want him to pay his respects and get out of the country as quickly as possible. He then summons one of his men, Ryu, who promptly appears. The order he gives is simple and direct. He tells Ryu to find the person responsible. As he walks away, a look of pure hatred crosses G's face as he vows to rip the heart out of whoever killed his brother. The scene shifts to Seaman, who asks Sun if someone stole Minjun's belongings. Sun confirms, explaining that the house was cleaned out a couple of days after the murder. He clarifies that a hunter's mana is unique, so the culprit took everything to erase any traces. Since Minjun was an archaeologist, any item that might have contained his mana was simply taken. Seaman questions if it was really the killer, thinking it was probably just a common thief, which shocks Sun. He shows Seaman the list of missing items, which is full of valuables, and asks why a simple thief would take such a huge risk. Seaman argues that if he were the killer and wanted to erase the mana, he would have just burned the whole house down. He then suggests that a thief likely broke into the empty house, adding that he's seen similar cases in the files. He decides he's going to check on some local fences, but his brother thinks it's impossible since the case is so old. With a confident smile, Seaman says he'll only know for sure if he checks and tells his brother he'll be back by nightfall. But a moment later, he gets embarrassed, realizing he might have sounded a little too confident. Just then, Predator starts complaining about the lack of results, announcing that he's taking control from now on. The entity yells at Seaman sarcastically, thanking him for leading them to a dead end. Nearby, a henchman hears the noise and asks his boss if he heard it as well. Seaman quickly hides behind a post to listen in on their conversation. They're discussing how those guys from the HMCS are raiding fences and even caught someone yesterday. The henchman explains that the HMCS doesn't need a warrant and can even kill awakened criminals on the spot. He suggests they hide their merchandise since the main targets are goods stolen from other hunters. At that moment, Seaman suddenly appears, shouting that he's the one who'll be confiscating everything. The henchman panics, warning his boss that this is the very same guy from the HMCS who's been raiding all the fences. Seaman demands their cooperation, but the boss just orders his man to attack, who protests that his skill isn't for combat. Suddenly, more henchmen come running, asking if their boss is okay and what's going on. The boss laughs, taunting that Seaman made a mistake coming alone, and that his body will end up at the bottom of the sea. Surrounded in the alley, Seaman just stares back at them with a calm and serious expression, completely unfazed. As a golden energy begins to emerge around him, he thanks them for saving him the trouble of hunting them down one by one. Seaman tells Predator that vacation's over, asking him to load up his strongest skill. The entity tries to negotiate for food, and as a magic circle appears on the ground, Seaman accepts the deal. As the energy grows around him, the thugs are startled by a flash of light right before Seaman unleashes a powerful shockwave in their direction. An immense blast of golden energy surges forward, completely filling the narrow alley. The light from the explosion is so intense it whites out the entire screen, showing only the raw power of the attack. From the impact, objects go flying, and the henchmen are left electrocuted by the skill. Lying on the ground and twitching, one of the men looks up. He stares at Seaman, who coolly asks if he's going to show him the way now. Utterly terrified, the henchman stammers and asks what kind of monster he is. With a sinister smile, Seaman simply replies, "Are you talking about me?" With a confident smile and an intimidating glare, he introduces himself as the Mad Dog. Predator brags that good things happen under his leadership, but Seaman insists it was just a coincidence. The entity then senses mana on a nearby object, and Seaman confirms he's finally found Minjun's things. He finds the research notes, but the lock is magically sealed. It requires the owner's mana to open. Predator gets frustrated that they can't read it, but Seaman clarifies he just wanted the mana from inside the book anyway. Without wasting any time, he takes out his phone and makes a quick call to Yoongu. Seaman informs him that he has a bunch of tied-up criminals to pick up and to bring the car. After hanging up, he says he has a place to visit and simply vanishes into thin air. The scene takes us to a secret place where forbidden techniques and skills are freely traded. It's a bustling neutral ground known to everyone as the Eclipse Sanctuary. Inside, a mysterious woman is shuffling her cards when she suddenly senses a presence. The great shaman Wing smiles, feeling that a very welcome face is approaching. Seaman notes the place hasn't changed in a decade, but Predator is already itching for a fight, eager to consume them all. Everyone in the courtyard stares as he arrives. His presence clearly hasn't gone unnoticed. He quickly warns Predator that this is a neutral zone and they can't start a fight. Just then, Wing greets him, saying it's been a while. With an inviting smile, she says she was waiting for him and leads him to her room. Once inside, she comments that he hasn't changed a bit in 10 years, and Seaman says the same about her. Wing then asks with a smile what important business kept him from coming back all this time. She's curious about his powerful reason, but he cuts her off, placing the journal on the table and asking her to extract the mana from the item. She finds his directness amusing and accepts the job on the spot since it's something she loves to do. To begin the ritual, she places a chalice and a dagger on the table, telling him he knows what to do. Without a second's hesitation, Suin picks up the dagger, preparing for what needs to be done. Reverting mana to its original state is nearly impossible, so he cuts his hand and drips blood into the chalice. Her ability, Mana Rewind, can do the impossible, like separating the ingredients in a curry. As she holds the book, we learn that skills like these use forbidden methods and break natural laws. That's why they are highly sought after by criminals and must be kept under constant surveillance. Wu Ming finishes the job complimenting his blood, but Predator finds the woman sinister and terrifying. He thanks her for the compliment and leaves her a tip, creating a golden light in his hand. Wu Ming asks if he's leaving already, but Suin says he's busy and that he'll be back. She lets out a little laugh, thinking he's still such a mysterious man. In the car, Predator says he's never going back there, and Suin asks why he's so angry today. Suin finds it ridiculous, since all they did was take a bit of his blood. Music. That's it. Suin announces they're heading to the Ancient History Research Center right now. He then reveals that's the place where Minjun was murdered some time ago. Predator complains about trespassing, but Suin informs him the place is Imperium property. With a serious look, he thinks about how Minjun's death impacted everyone at the time, adding that it still affects him to this day. Determined, he says he's going to find out exactly what happened on that fateful day. Predator asks if he's really going to use that, and Suin confirms without hesitation. He then activates Mana Recall, a skill that materializes emotions from a target's mana. The mana he got from Wu Ming flows out of the vial, spreading throughout the area. With that, images of the past begin to form right before his eyes. Predator complains that there's not enough mana and the image is blurry. Music. But Suin says the skill shows emotions, not memories. With a serious look, he analyzes the situation and states that Minjun was far from weak. This leads him to conclude that the attacker must have been highly skilled to defeat him alone, and so quickly. Suddenly, the image of the fallen Minjun begins to murmur something, catching Suin's attention. He manages to hear the words Order of VI and wonders if it was an order from a VIP. The scene then shows the image of a mysterious assailant. Music. Completely hidden by a dark hood. The projection reveals it wasn't a VIP, but orders from someone even higher up. Suin wonders if Minjun was working for another organization, and Predator Music asks if he's okay. Predator remembers Suin talking about his disciples for a century and how he searched for them as soon as he returned. Predator finds it strange that he hasn't shed a single tear. Suin jokes that he learned to be a poet on Netflix, but Predator senses his intense emotions and asks why he's hiding it all. Suin just says he's fine, and that maybe his mind broke after a century of fighting. Just then, the door opens, and a masked man calls out to him, confirming his identity. The man says it was hard to find him, and that someone is very eager to see him now. Suin crosses his arms, thinking the guy is pretty confident for only bringing 6 henchmen. The masked man is startled for a moment. Surprised by Suin's sharp perception, he composes himself and says he'll get straight to the point, stating the hunter has only 2 choices. The first is to let them tie him up peacefully, and the second is to fight, lose an arm, and be dragged away. Suin then says he'd rather keep his arms raising, music, his fists as if to surrender. The leader takes the gesture as a surrender and orders one of his henchmen to tie him up. The subordinate promptly obeys, walking towards Suin to carry out the order, but suddenly, a dark shadow attacks the henchman by surprise, and he screams in pain from the blow. Suin smiles, revealing he's going to use his arms to finish them off, and Predator warns that they've fallen into his trap. The other henchmen become furious and charge forward to attack, yelling that Suin is done for. Just then, a powerful voice suddenly rings out, ordering them all to stop the attack immediately. Ji appears with a red aura, announcing he's taking over the fight because this prey is his. Suin just smirks, thinking the hunter's dramatic entrance is pretty stylish. Ji stares down Suin, asking if he's the famous hunter from the HMCS agency. He then gets straight to the point, wanting to know if Suin was the one who killed his brother, music, Jin. Suin says he doesn't know anything, but he also doesn't ask for the trash's name before sweeping it up. With that response, Ji is completely consumed by hatred, music, losing all his patience. He stomps so hard the floor cracks, screaming that Suin is a bastard. With that, he lunges forward with all his might, vowing to rip Sumin's heart out on the spot. The hunter lands a devastating blow packed with absurd raw power, but Sumin blocks the strike with a smile, complimenting him on being at least an A rank. Jerry is stunned, wondering if that was a healing skill and if Sumin is some kind of healer. Music enraged, he unleashes a barrage of attacks, screaming for the bastard to just die already. His henchmen are in disbelief until one of them shouts for the others to stop standing around and attack all at once. But Sumin instantly appears in front of him, warning the small fry not to interfere in their fight. He then effortlessly dodges every single blow, telling them he won't let them ruin his fun. Ji is left completely stunned. The man had read every trajectory, dodging with only minimal movement. Ji realizes this bastard is not only strong, but also extremely perceptive, far more than he'd ever imagined. Gu resolves music to go all out, but Sumin suddenly grabs a henchman to make a point. He tightens his grip on the man, warning him that those who commit crimes must face the consequences, no exceptions. Sumin calmly confirms that he killed Ji's brother, adding that the only ones who should be crying are the victims. Music. Not Ji. Furious at this response, Ji demands to know if Sumin thinks every criminal simply deserves to die. He screams that his brother Jaken had no choice and only became a criminal to raise him when they were just kids. As his arm glows with power fueled by rage, he swears he'll make Sumin pay for destroying his brother's life. With that, he unleashes Rain of 1,000 Arrows, launching a massive attack of concentrated mana. Sumin sees there's no way to dodge and asks Pred for a skill, who just complains about being overworked. He then activates the Neutralize skill, creating a giant magic circle that nullifies Ji's attack. Ji is completely shocked as he watches his arrows vanish, wondering if that was some kind of dispel magic. One of the henchmen despairs at the sight and screams that their best bet is to attack all at once. But Sumin is already right next to Gay, telling him to knock it off with the sad, repetitive sob story. With a bluish glow, he lands a powerful strike right in the center of the hunter's chest. The impact is so strong it sends Ji flying, and his men, music, scream out for their boss in desperation. Even injured, he struggles back to his feet and shouts that the fight is his, ordering everyone else to stay away. Ji thinks Sumin must be out of mana, deciding to attack at close range to end this for good. With a war cry, he charges forward, leaping at Sumin with a spinning energy attack. But Sumin simply stops him cold with a single punch to the face, music, telling him not to even bother. He then follows up with a rapid series of blows, not giving Ji a single opening to use his skills. Sumin even takes a moment to complain about the old building, asking if this criminal trash is going to pay for all the repairs. Ji is sent flying by the impact as Sumin does a backflip in midair. Seeing an opening, Gay yells for his henchman Ryu to bind Sumin as fast as he can. Ryu grumbles about them only asking for help now, but activates his containment chains anyway. Red chains shoot out and bind Sumin, immobilizing his arms and body. While trapped, he hears Ryu shout that he's going to tear him to pieces so he can't heal. But Sumin just congratulates Ryu for following in his big brother's footsteps and becoming a criminal himself. With a golden magic circle, he activates his Life Steal skill, which begins to drain the target's very life force. Ji screams in agony, feeling his life being sucked away as his body withers and ages in an instant. The henchman panics, yelling that this can't possibly be the ability of a mere healer. Sumin then explains that this was the very first skill he ever awakened, and that he's no ordinary healer. He clarifies that he does more than just heal. He controls life force at its very core. With a confident, power-filled smirk, he reveals his true class, a life mage. Sumin then turns to the last remaining henchman, who desperately begs not to be hurt. Sumin simply says, "No," and knocks the guy out with a single chop to the head. With everyone down for the count, Sumin glances around, wondering if that's all of them. Then he remembers something and fiddles with a camera on his belt, hoping it was on. He speaks into the camera to someone named Yonggu, making sure to state for the record that the criminals attacked first and it was all self-defense. The scene then cuts to Yonggu's team, music, who are watching the whole thing in shock, spitting out their snacks. The only problem an agent points out is that Sumin hit the live button instead of record. Elsewhere, officials at the ministry are discussing the video, wondering since when the HMCS started doing live broadcasts. A man explains that it's all part of a new recruitment project from the agency's international headquarters. He adds that the project has been a total failure, music, because until now they couldn't create any content that actually grabbed people's attention. An official wonders aloud why such an incredible talent would ever join the HMCS, but he's quickly interrupted. A woman points out that the most important thing, music, is that the man who just died on the live stream was G, a notorious criminal from Hong Kong. Just then, the door opens and everyone snaps to attention as an important figure apologizes for the music delay. It's Daeseo Choi, the president of South Korea himself, who has arrived demanding to know what's going on. A few days later, the scene shifts to the bustling cafeteria of the prestigious Imperium Guild. Sejun sits down with his brother and asks if he can hear all the surrounding chatter. But Xiumin is more focused on his meal, and Predator tells him to just tune it out and keep eating. He raves about how good the cafeteria food is, asking if he could have lunch there every day. Sejun then explains that the video from his live stream dealing with GE blew up online. He mentions that luckily the camera was so shaky that his face wasn't recognizable. But he's worried what might happen if Daesung Choi finds out, asking Xiumin to keep a low profile for the time being. Xiumin calmly nods, picking up a piece of omelet. He agrees to do as his brother asks and then offers him a bite, catching Sejun by surprise. Sejun gets flustered, but Xiumin says that no matter how old he gets, he will always be his little brother. Suddenly, a group approaches their table to greet the guildmaster. A hunter named Jisoo Shin bows and thanks him, revealing she awakened an A-rank skill because of him. Sejun notices the hunter Seok is with them and asks if they are all headed to the rookie seminar. He takes the opportunity to introduce the other hunters, Hamin Chu of the White Lion and Yamato of Frost Soul. Finally, Taegi Seok introduces himself, music, stating it's a pleasure to meet the famous Xiumin. Seok has heard about his achievements at the HMCS, and Xiumin replies that the pleasure is all his. But Hamin Chu interrupts, asking if he's the big shot rookie everyone has been buzzing about. He questions music whether Xiumin was the one who took down his rival GE in the video, but says he seriously doubts it. With a smirk, he points and says that Xiumin looks weak as hell. The other hunters are shocked by his attitude, and Sejun scolds him by name. Sejun finds it completely disrespectful for him to just show up and treat someone so rudely. Hamin defends himself, claiming he just asked a question, but Seok tells him to watch his mouth. Sejun gets furious and threatens to tell his master, Sungil Choi, what happened, but Hamin isn't fazed, boasting that he's a direct disciple of Xiaolong, the leader of the Black Lotus. Upon hearing that name, Xiumin immediately stops eating, music, his gaze fixed. He remembers his former disciple Xiaolong, one of the young men he trained in the past. Hamin was about to keep bragging, but Sejun claps his hands and declares the scene over. Xiumin then challenges him, saying that if his master didn't teach him manners, maybe he at least taught him how to fight. Hamin becomes enraged, furious that he dared to mock his master to his face. In a fit of rage, he stands up and kicks the table hard, startling the others. With a dark look, Hamin threatens Xiumin, music, telling the kid he'd better watch his back. Seok panics and apologizes for Hamin's behavior, but Sejun tells him not to worry. Sejun tells his brother to ignore the idiot, and Xiumin takes the chance to say he kept his promise to behave. With a smile, he thinks to himself that music, since the guy's his own disciple's apprentice, he'll let it slide this one time. The scene changes to an office where a man confirms he will register the case as closed. The director of the HMCS gang, Yu Bei, asks what brings his visitor here, since they could have handled it over email. The man is Sungil Choi, master of the White Lion, who came to apologize for the incident in person. He begins to apologize for his members' disrespect, but Gang Ube cuts him off before he can continue. The director smiles and says a formal apology isn't necessary since no fight broke out and no one got hurt, but he then tests the waters, asking if Choi's real intention is to poach the new recruit. The director explains that the rookie is valuable and has already been sent to escort an awakened criminal. Sungil finds that a shame, commenting that it's rare for a correctional facility to request help from the HMCS. The director agrees, saying that until now, such tasks have always been passed on to the major guilds. He glances at a report, thinking that perhaps the winds of change are finally starting to blow. Sungil stands and asks if he can send Hamin Chu to apologize in person instead. Music. The director agrees immediately, saying that will give them a chance to sort things out. Sungil says goodbye, thanking him for the visit, and the director wishes him a safe trip. But he has already seen through the attempt to get access to the recruit and vows to secure him no matter what. With that, Choi calls for Mrs. Seo and tells her to prepare Hamin Chu for a field mission. The assistant then asks to which location she should direct Hunter Hamin Chu. He reveals the mission's destination will be Incheon City, music, where the prison is located. The scene shifts to a guard complaining about the heat, wondering why the HMCS hasn't sent anyone over yet. Another guard assures him they'll be there soon, and the first one begins to complain about a new prisoner. He's Music, furious because instead of behaving, the guy's just making more work for them. The prisoner's name is Carrie Volka. He arrived quietly, but then suddenly freaked out and took down 5 men at once. Inside the Music, the prisoner, Carrie Volka, stares at his handcuffs, contemplating his situation. Suddenly, a rat approaches him, saying it carries a message from the Bestia organization. The rat explains that his escape has already been arranged, as a task is waiting for him on the outside. But without a second thought, Suman simply steps on the rat, crushing the creature flat on the floor. The voice says the only thing he needs to do is cause total chaos. Outside the prison, Suman arrives in a light rain, surveying the area. He then confirms if this is indeed his destination, the Indian Correctional Center. Heyman Chu pulls up to the prison, absolutely furious, shouting that they've already left with the prisoner. He complains about the sloppy transport and wonders why Sion even sent him here. Just then, he spots a bus in the distance and asks if that's the one. The guard immediately confirms it. Frustrated, he gets into his car, grumbling that at this rate he'll end up in the next state over. He floors it, yelling that Sion is going to have to pay him double for overtime. The scene shifts to the bus where Suman is enjoying a drink and calls out to the prisoner. The prisoner, Terry Volka, tells him to drink quietly, but Suman simply replies, no. Terry calls him an arrogant brat and asks if he's supposed to be his guard at the next facility. Calmly, Suman just says no, again continuing to sip his drink. The prisoner figures he must be a rookie and doubts the kid can handle him alone, but Suman gives him a bored look and asks if he should care who he is. Terry is taken aback, letting out a wow at the kid's sheer audacity and lack of fear. He can't believe Suman showed up without even knowing who he was or the reason for his transport. Suman just replies that the only thing he knows is that Terry talks too much, enraging the man. Then Terry starts bragging that he took down 5 awakened prisoners right before he left. He continues saying he did all that even while wearing a super heavy restraint device, but Suman just asks why they would send a rookie to escort such a powerful criminal all alone. He then finishes his drink and reveals the answer: they sent him here to die. Just then, a massive explosion erupts on the road, engulfing the bus in a fireball. The impact sends the vehicle flying off the road, where it flips over and crashes onto the grass. Outside, a young man observes the wreckage and asks his master if the explosion managed to kill him. Suddenly, Terry kicks clean through the bus's metal frame, yelling for that wretched old man out there. He emerges from the wreckage furious and confronts the two, asking if they were trying to kill him along with the guard. The old man scoffs, calling the gray wolf a little dog, and Terry tells him to shut his mouth. The young man confirms he took care of the guard, saying his brain is probably drowning in a mix of coffee and blood. The camera focuses on Suman's hand, limp and motionless next to his spilled can on the floor. The boy begins to unlock the cuffs, warning Terry to stay still, as they are Manatech products. With a click, the cuffs finally break open, freeing the prisoner from his restraints. Terry celebrates his newfound freedom, but suddenly, a voice yells for the criminals to freeze. Heyman Chu arrives and takes in the whole scene, realizing the bus must have taken the most suspicious route possible. Heyman scoffs at the rookie guard, saying, "Looks like I bet on the wrong horse this time." He then cracks his knuckles, demanding to know what organization the criminals work for. The young man recognizes his face, the A+ rank hunter, Heyman Chu from the White Lion Guild. His master notes that he doesn't sense anyone else nearby, which Terry sees as a perfect opportunity for a warm-up. Heyman charges forward annoyed, but Terry just glares back, asking why they should bother answering him. Then Terry uses his skill and transforms into a giant, furious white werewolf. Heyman is surprised by the transformation, but says it doesn't matter if he's human or beast. He activates his relentless assault, covering his body in red mana armor. With the skill active, he rushes the werewolf with a sequence of brutal attacks. The werewolf withstands the blows, thinking the fight would be much harder if he were alone, but Heyman doesn't understand. His hits are landing clean and clearly dealing damage to the enemy. Even so, the creature remains on its feet, taking every single attack without falling. He even mocks him, asking if this is supposed to be a massage to celebrate his freedom. The old man realizes they can't waste time and tells the young man to end the fight now. The boy obeys, conjuring pink energy to trap Heyman with the 10-headed serpent. Heyman scoffs, wondering what he's planning to do with that toy snake. The serpent lunges forward, coiling around the hunter's body as he complains about the skill. With Heyman trapped, the werewolf lands a powerful blow, saying he expected more. He yells that in the underworld, pampered hunters like him are nothing but worm food. But Heyman retorts that he talks big for someone who needed help to beat him. Terry kicks him, saying it's called being smart. and that Haman should have waited for backup. The old man warns that there's no time telling Volka to kill the hunter at once. The werewolf prepares an energy attack and asks if he has any last words, but admits he doesn't really care. Haman grits his teeth, wondering if this is how he's going to die completely helpless. Suddenly, a golden explosion erupts from the ground, sending everyone flying from the impact. The young man from Bestia cries out in pain, feeling the earth tremble from the sheer force of the attack. Music. Suman appears, asking if it was Xiaolong who taught him to give up so easily. Haman is stunned, wondering how he could have possibly survived that bus explosion. Suman complains about the camera, and Predator quips that he should get a magnifying glass if his eyes are already failing him. Siri can't believe he's alive, and the old man realizes his skill is on another level. Haman desperately yells for him to stay down and wait for backup to arrive. But Suman lists their crimes and passes judgment under the authority of an HMCS hunter. With a golden aura and a sinister smile, he reveals their sentence summary: execution. Suman announces that the three of them are sentenced by his authority, and the penalty is execution. The scene shifts where a man tells Xiaolong's apprentice that the Asura skill isn't a simple striking move. He then clasps his hands, summoning a red magic circle with an intense glow. Furious, the creature charges forward, screaming, but Suman prepares to attack with his own power. Ching! Your music, his fist lands squarely on the monster, shattering the beast's jaw with a sickening crack. He then explains that this is an impaling skill, music piercing the enemy with a flash of red light. The apprentice is floored, yelling that this is Master Xiaolong's signature technique. The monster is sent flying, and Suman comments that he needs to drain its blood to tenderize the meat. Music. Suddenly, another man launches a lightning attack, shouting the name of the skill Maharaga, but an old man effortlessly dodges the blow, leaving the guy in complete disbelief. Suman gets curious about the old man's power, and Fred immediately asks if he can eat that. Suman then explains that it's just a magic scroll, and Fred complains that it's basically frozen food. Outraged, the apprentice yells at Suman, demanding to know how he's using his master's skill. With no patience for talk, Suman grabs his face, making the guy scream in agony. Just then, the old man appears with a sinister aura and warns the young man not to move a single muscle. The old man threatens to crush the apprentice's soul with his gravity field, putting him in a tough spot. But Suman just smirks and asks if that's actually supposed to be a threat to him. So the old man proposes a deal offering to free the hostage in exchange for their departure. He tries to convince Suman, saying it would be a win-win if he just walked away. Suman cleans out his ear and calls it nonsense, since he only wants what this mission offers. He says the apprentice can escape on his own, but the boy shouts that he can't get out of there. The old man gets confused and asks if they aren't on the same side, but Suman flatly denies it. Hearing that, the old man's eyes go wide. Realizing something is very wrong, Suman walks toward him and asks which assassin organization he belongs to. The man tenses up and asks who Suman is and what he wants. Already preparing an attack with a cold gaze, Suman tells him not to make him repeat the question about his group. Desperate, the old man unleashes his electric power and yells for him to get no closer. But Suman remains perfectly calm and prepares a shockwave with his own blue energy. His attack is so strong it completely overwhelms the old man's power, who can't understand how he did it. Fred says the food got tastier, and Suman notices he's recovered 40% of his mana. Suman scoffs at the old man, telling him to throw in the towel and enjoy the little time he has left. But the man, Music, refuses, shouting that they'll never rat out the organization so he can forget about it. The apprentice then explains that they made a silence pact, Music, that's linked to their mana. Suddenly, the werewolf Fula appears covered in wounds, and the old man curses him for taking so long. Suman lets out a slight chuckle and asks if that's all they've got just because they're afraid of dying. Shrouded in a green aura, he tells them not to worry, since you get used to it after a few times. The old man then yells for Volka to do something, but the beast tells the old man to shut up. Enraged, the werewolf warns that he doesn't care about dying because he's going to rip him to shreds, but the apprentice steps in front to block the attack, saying he won't let him pass, with a smile on his face. He comments, Music, that the fight has just gotten a little more fair. He yells that the monster should have stayed dead, but the creature replies that it's Music, just getting started. With his face shrouded in shadows, Suman whispers the name of his technique. Music. Boreal Gale. And then a giant ice storm slams into the beast and sends everyone flying. He grabs the old man by the neck and asks in a cold tone what it feels like. And then he answers his own question. Music. Saying it feels like dying slowly. The old man screams in pain, being slowly suffocated by our ruthless protagonist's grip. With a sinister look, Suman asks how many deaths it will take for him to finally tell the truth. The apprentice despairs, asking what kind of monster would do something like that. Suan then breaks the boy's arm, remarking that apparently one death wasn't enough for him. Horrified, the apprentice realizes that Suan heals his targets just to torture them over and over again. He then proceeds to the third attempt, asking them once more which group they belong to. The apprentice can't take it anymore and begs the old man to talk, who finally whispers the name Bestia. With a satisfied smile, Suan confirms that's the name of the organization he was looking for. Just then, the old man remembers why that skill seems so familiar. Struck by a sudden realization, he shouts that Suan is the Mad Dog, one of the 3 supreme masters who vanished long ago. Now that he has what he wanted, Suan crouches beside the man and says he'll get straight to the point. He then creates a manosphere and asks if the apprentice knows the scoundrel he's searching for. We learn that Bestia is an assassins league that specializes in hunting and killing other hunters. They're the most influential organization in the underworld, renowned for their skills and absolute success rate. The old man explains that as a first-generation hunter, he had no choice but to accept their offer. He then speaks of the Pact of Silence, a tradition meant to protect the secrets of their comrades. It's an unspoken rule that forces members to remain loyal until the very end of their lives. For 15 years, he served Bestia faithfully and believed he would die before ever betraying them. But the constant cycle of death and revival at Suan's hands forced him to finally break his silence and give in. At that moment, the apprentice reveals that their target's code name is Blackmamba, which starts to make everything clearer. To make matters worse, he confirms that this Blackmamba is also a member of their organization. Suan finds the name ridiculous and asks if this is the scumbag he's after. He then moves on to his next question, wanting to know if they were the ones who killed the hunter Smjunjang. With an overwhelmingly oppressive aura, he demands an answer. The apprentice writhes in pain on the ground, overwhelmed. The man feels such a powerful killing intent that he can't help but wonder what kind of monster Suan truly is. The old man explains that the members don't know one another. His only mission was to free someone called the Hound from prison. He adds that Bestia expected him to bring the Hound to their biennial meeting in 1 week. The assassin offers to give Suan the meeting's coordinates, begging for his life in return. Then the old man prostrates himself and begs the master to accept them both as his new servants. Xiaolong's apprentice is disgusted by the scene. He shouts that there's no way and begs Suan not to accept the offer, but our protagonist finds it strange that the boy is suddenly calling him brother. The apprentice explains that because Suan used Asura, he met his master, which basically makes them brothers. The guy even offers to become his apprentice, but an impatient Suan tells him to shut up, a thoughtful look on his face. Suan refocuses on his primary goal. His main objective is just getting information on Blackmamba, but he realizes that if he lets these two go, Bestia might find out about him, which would be a huge problem. Suddenly he changes his mind and says they have a deal, leaving the two assassins completely shocked. The old man thanks him profusely, but Suan warns that there's a condition. He says that to ensure their loyalty, they both have to take a mana oath. The apprentice Volki complains that it's a slave contract, but the old man quickly tells him to shut up if he wants to live. With little choice, they step into the magic circle that's now glowing brightly on the forest floor. Suan then creates a mana disc and tells them to pour their energy into it and state their names. The old man introduces himself as Crimson Spectre, and the younger one says he is Kari Volka, sealing the pact. A little familiar, celebrates that the new lackeys are now his, and Suan officially names them his subordinates. In return, he promises them his absolute protection as their contract glows brightly on a scroll. Seeing no other way out, the two accept the offer and bow before their new master. But Xiaolong's apprentice throws a fit, threatening to report Suan to the Hunters Association. With a chillingly sinister look, our protagonist asks what he just said, causing the boy to freeze on the spot. Suan then picks up the scroll, confirming that Bestia's meeting is indeed in 1 week. At that, Suan turns to the boy and unexpectedly invites him to be his new direct disciple. The apprentice is overjoyed and immediately starts calling him master, much to Suan's satisfaction. Now with his new team assembled, he thinks 4 people should be enough to turn everything upside down, but he smiles, thinking he'll need just 1 more member to help with the cleanup afterward. The scene then shifts to a prison where a guard is yelling that a prisoner has escaped from transport. An important-looking official is furious, demanding to know if the HMCS's enhanced security was just for show. The guard defends himself, saying the escapee was so fast he couldn't even react in time. The director doesn't want to hear excuses and yells for the person in charge of the HMCS transport to come and apologize in person. But the hunter reveals there were 5 to 10 guards in the convoy, leaving the director completely shocked. He points out that for this specific transport music,